Coming up on NewsCenter this Wednesday night. A South Korean court will not review a complaint over the 1965 treaty between Korea and Japan. What does this mean and what is the significance? We'll have the details. President Park stresses that the country's reform drives are absolutely critical to the lives of the Korean people, especially the nation's young job seekers. And a group of 22 refugees from Myanmar land to a warm welcome in Korea, signaling a positive start to Seoul's 3-year pilot resettlement program. NewsCenter begins right now. Good evening to our viewers in Korea and hello to those around the world. This is NewsCenter. We will not issue a judgment on the constitutionality of decades-old treaty between Korea and Japan that Japan uses to deny individual compensation to victims of forced labor during Japan's colonial rule of Korea. That is the verdict by Korea's Constitutional Court today, based on decision that the accord was never meant to serve as a standard for providing individual compensation in the first place. Now, what is the significance of today's ruling and its possible ramifications? Arirang News Foreign Affairs correspondent Kwon So-ah reports.
Complainant Lee Yun-jae, whose father died due to forced labor for Japanese companies during Japan's 1910 to 1945 colonial rule of Korea, filed a case to Korea's Constitutional Court in November 2009, saying that a 1965 treaty between Korea and Japan is unconstitutional. It was the longest case to stay unsettled at Korea's Constitutional Court. What came out in Wednesday's verdict is that there is to be no change to the bilateral agreement. At issue was whether Article 1, Clause 2 of the treaty, the Korea-Japan Claim Settlement Agreement, violates the property, rights, and interests of individuals. Had the court ruled in favor of E, Japanese companies would have been made responsible to compensate individuals who they forced to labor during the colonial period. Tokyo claims the issue was settled by the 1965 treaty, a point made again by Japanese Foreign Minister Fumio Kishida on Tuesday when he said he would be keeping a close eye on the ruling without making any prediction about the outcome. The court's decision is receiving extra attention in both Korea and Japan, as this year marks the 50th anniversary of diplomatic ties between the two countries, whose relations since then have been repeatedly strained by historical and territorial issues.
With this decision, I think the individuals who pursue with this case will have some experience difficulties. But the relations between Korea and Japan will have kind of new start. But I think it could have good impact on the other issues, such as comfort woman issue.
Korea's Foreign Affairs Ministry said it had no specific reaction to the ruling, but prior to the ruling earlier in the day, Seoul's Foreign Affairs Minister Byungse expressed hope that the court would make a, quote, wise decision. Korea's top diplomat also made note that the international community is watching the events unfolding in this part of the world, as the world is getting smaller and these kinds of issues no longer limited to individual countries. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
Well, those remarks by Seoul's foreign minister that our Kwon So-ah mentioned was made at an end-of-the-year luncheon with correspondents. Now, aside from that, Minister Yoon Byung-se touched upon a wide range of diplomatic progress made this year. He has some bold comments on North Korea's denuclearization, on the unresolved issue of Imperial Japan's sexual enslavement of women before and during World War II. Korea's top diplomat acknowledged that the need for some more time. Arirang News Lee Soo-eun reports on the Foreign Affairs Chief's wrap-up of progress this year, as well as a preview of 2016.
There will be progress on the denuclearization of North Korea early next year. That's according to Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se, who was speaking at a forum on Wednesday hosted by the Korea Broadcasting Journalists Club. He emphasized South Korea's determination to re-engage the North by opening up the possibility of multilateral talks.
South Korea will consider dynamic forms of discussion with the North that include the U.S., Japan, and China, or all of them, but not just the six-party talks. We are expecting more progress early next year.
The six-party talks, the main forum for dialogue on the North's denuclearization that involved the two Koreas, the U.S., Japan, China, and Russia, were last held in December 2008. Minister Yoon also stressed the importance of the international community's role in persuading North Korea to denuclearize.
It is vital for the UN Security Council to get more involved in North Korea's denuclearization. The international community must create circumstances in which North Korea might think there is no option other than nuclearization, like Iran did.
Regarding recent talks on the issue of sexual slavery by the Japanese military during World War II, the foreign minister acknowledged that there is a slight delay and asked for more time to resolve the matter, as the government is doing its utmost to bring about a compromise with Japan. Isuun, Arirang News.
It's soon report card time for the nation's various reform tasks. And before that rolls around, of course, the graders will be the Korean people. The president has taken up the task of checking and assessing performance results of each. What she found: the administration's ambitious labor reform is only half done, largely because related bills have not yet won approval in Parliament. And giving up on those reforms is not an option. It's a matter of life and death for the Korean people, especially the young looking for jobs. Arirang's presidential office correspondent Song Ji-sun joins me from the top office. Ji-sun, some very strong words from the president there.
Gonyang President Park said the labor reform plan is only half done as the related bills have not been passed yet. She added the reforms are not an option but a must for the people's survival. President Park Geun-hye chaired a meeting on the progress of her administration's key reform tasks. The goals were laid out at the start of the year and involve a range of things from making strategic use of free trade deals to establishing a channel of cooperative exchanges with Pyongyang. President Park noted the achievements made, such as the restructuring of pension plans for public workers and the completion of a national network of innovation centers aimed at supporting startups. She also renewed her call for lawmakers to pass a slew of pending economic reform bills, saying that legislation related to people's livelihoods is not a right but a duty of the National Assembly.
노동개혁은 우리 청년들의 생존이 달려있는 문제인 만큼 어떤 이유로도 정쟁의 대상이 될 수 없고 정략적 흥정이나 거래의 수단이 되어서도 안 됩니다. 만약 국회의 비협조로 노동개혁이 좌초된다면 역사의 심판에서 벗어날 수 없게 될 것이라고 생각합니다.
The major labor reforms, including the adoption of a wage peak system and flexible work hours at public organizations, are aimed at creating more jobs for young people. Korea's youth unemployment rate hovered at over 8% in November, with about 1 in 5 people between the ages of 15 and 29 have given up looking for a job and are reportedly not employed in school or in training. Ordinary citizens and working level officials also attended Wednesday's meeting to offer their ideas for next year's policies. Gonyang.
Thank you, Ji-sun. That was our presidential office correspondent, Song Ji-sun. Now, over in Parliament, it was another day of deadlock. And for that impasse, the two rival parties blame each other. Arirang News parliamentary correspondent Ji Myung-gil is there at Seoul's National Assembly. Myung-gil, aren't we nearing the end of the final session of this assembly?
Gonyang, there's only 1 week left before the last session of the 19th National Assembly comes to an end, and lawmakers have still failed to reach a compromise on a list of contentious bills. The ruling Saenuri Party said Wednesday the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy is to blame for bringing the parliament to a complete standstill.
It's deplorable that the parliament's in a state of legislative paralysis and that the promises made between the rival parties have never been fulfilled. Although the assembly speakers tried to mediate the situation, the opposition blocs refused to cooperate.
An array of economic bills pushed by the government is currently stuck in the legislature. These include bills on the labor market, the service sector, and a tax credit for companies that restructure their businesses. The MPD says the bills are being pushed by the administration and do little to improve the livelihoods of ordinary people. Instead, the party wants to put its versions of the bills on the table. At the moment, however, the embattled party is more focused on pulling itself together after another one of its lawmakers walked out on Wednesday. Im Nae-hyun is just the latest in a series of defections from the party, following the high-profile departure of former party co-chair An Chol-soo earlier this month.
Our party must undergo a renewal. We must strengthen our unity and solidify our place as a strong opposition party in order to win in the upcoming general election. Defecting from the party is not the answer. Instigating division will only lead to a crushing defeat for the party.
As the rival parties continue to lock horns, it is feared that the 19th National Assembly will turn out to be one of the most unproductive in Korea's modern history. Kon-young?
Well, record unproductivity is no good news on any front. Our parliamentary correspondent Ji Myung-gil, thank you. We've seen an overwhelming number of refugees moving across the globe as they flee from domestic troubles, including civil wars and political persecution this year. Well, Korea has now joined the club of opening up to those seeking refuge in efforts to take on its fair share of duties as a responsible member of the international community. The first group of beneficiaries for this nation's pilot resettlement program this morning. From where? Our Oh Soo-young has the details.
Korea has welcomed 22 refugees from Myanmar seeking a fresh new start after spending up to 19 years at a transit camp in Thailand.
We couldn't move around freely within the refugee camp, so living there was difficult. We're grateful to have come to Korea. We came hoping for a better environment and better education for our children.
4 families arrived in the country on Wednesday at Incheon International Airport. And they're the first beneficiaries of Korea's pilot resettlement program introduced earlier this year. Through various screening procedures, the candidates were selected in July by the Justice Ministry with help from the United Nations Refugee Agency. The refugees will be granted a long-term residency status, and to help them adjust to life in Korea, they will reside at the Incheon Immigration Center to receive a year-long resettlement education such as job training and Korean language courses. After the year is up, they will relocate to designated regions with the help of local NGOs and religious groups to make the transition smoother. In collaboration with the UN Refugee Agency, Korea's refugee resettlement program aims to bring over 30 refugees from Myanmar every year up to 2017 on a trial basis. In the last 12 years, Korea accepted some 522 refugees, and if this pilot program is successful, it may open the doors for more resettlements. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Predictable in its unpredictability. That's North Korea for you. But a South Korean institute has tried to make some predictions based on the regime's past patterns. Our Connie Kim zooms in on a possible surprise move ahead of its rare Workers' Party Congress come May.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un could seek a breakthrough in inter-Korean relations through summit talks around the time of its 7th Workers' Party Congress in May, the first since 1980. The prediction was offered by the Institute for National Security Strategy, which added the regime needs tangible achievements to announce at the meeting, especially given its disappointing economic figures. North Korea's growth has been on a downward trend since the 1.3% it logged in 2012, the first year into Kim Jong-un's reign. To boost its economy, North Korea has reportedly sent 50,000 workers abroad, who have brought the regime an estimated $300 million. Another source of revenue for the North was the Mount Kumgang tour program, which has been stalled since 2008 after a South Korean tourist was shot there. The North has sought to revive the program, but the institute has suggested that could be a barrier to the resumption of inter-Korean ties. Many experts in South Korea have also said an inter-Korean summit may not be possible.
The recent inter-Korean vice ministerial level meeting failed to bring agreement on regular family reunions for war-separated families and resumption of the Mount Kumgang tour program. President Park Geun-hye has also made clear she will not hold talks for talk's sake, meaning the prospects for a third inter-Korean summit are very low.
While an inter-Korean summit remains a question mark for now, many observers in Seoul say the meeting will either cement Kim Jong-un's grip on power or challenge his leadership. But the outcome will depend on the announcements made during the event. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Nearly 6 years ago, South Korea's warship Cheonan was torpedoed in waters off the nation's west coast. North Korea to this day denies any involvement, but evidence recovered from the site has concluded that Pyongyang was in fact behind the attack. Ironically enough, this crucial and conclusive piece of evidence, the smoking gun really, has been rusting away due to lack of proper care. Our national defense correspondent Kim Hyun-bin tells us why.
On March 26 of 2010, a North Korean submarine fired a torpedo and sank South Korea's warship Cheonan off South Korea's west coast near Paekmyeongdo Island. In the aftermath of the incident, a team of international investigators recovered a torpedo fragment from the wreck, which had an inscription saying number 1 in Korean language. The international team concluded that this inscription was a key piece of evidence that proved North Korea was behind the attack.
The number 1 sign on the back had been etched in Korean, in a format used in the north, and coincides with Pyongyang's torpedo that we had previously secured. This signifies that the recovered torpedo fragment was made in North Korea.
But this crucial piece of evidence has started to rust due to a lack of proper preservation methods.
The torpedo fragment is preserved at the DoD's Criminal Investigation Command, but it's true that the number 1 inscription is fading.
North Korea has denied any involvement in the sinking of the Cheonan, despite the evidence found by the international team of investigators. The Defense Ministry said on Wednesday that it has been banned from assessing the recovered evidence, as there was a trial in progress. This in turn resulted in corrosion and other damage. The trial involved a defamation suit against Shin Sang-chul, who published online that the sinking of the Cheonan was orchestrated by the South Korean government in order to blame it on North Korea. Shin has been sentenced to 3 years in prison for libel, and his final trial is scheduled for January 25th. The Defense Ministry says it will continue to discuss ways to preserve the evidence with the prosecutor in charge and have its damage prevention request addressed. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
Korea's tallest building, also the world's 5th tallest skyscraper, has topped off its exterior construction. Arirang News Shin Se-min reports on what this building could mean to Korea in the long run.
Reaching closer to the sky, the Lotte World Tower, the tallest skyscraper in Korea, topped off its building after 5 years of construction. Chasing after Dubai's Burj Khalifa and China's Shanghai Tower, the mega structure currently stands as the 5th tallest building in the world. Once the spire is put on top, the 123-story Lotte World Tower will become the 4th tallest skyscraper in the world at 555 meters tall, outdoing New York's One World Trade Center. The brainchild of Lotte Group's founder, Shin Gyuk-ho, the high-rise will be set and fully operational a year later from now. Located in the southern part of Seoul, the tower will house a hotel, residences, offices, and restaurants, standing beside other Lotte landmarks such as Lotte World Mall and the Lotte World Amusement Park.
Lotte World Tower will be a tourist attraction allowing a panoramic view of Seoul's Hangang River. Once the construction is complete, we're expecting at least 2 million visitors every year.
Lotte Group is looking at some $680 million worth of tourism income and give out 20,000 jobs and $136 million increase in tax revenue. But still, public fret over safety issues that has haunted the 5-year-long project and still lingers on. Water seepage from an aquarium holding 5 tons of water, a panel on the front gate going loose, falling on a visitor, were all caused by faulty construction methods. Fatal casualties have also made headlines during construction, including a recent death of a worker who fell while working on the exterior of the building. These reasons and more prompted the Ministry of Public Safety and Security and city officials to order special inspections of the building site, lingering as factors questioning the prosperity of Lotte Group's mega project down the line. Shin, Arirang News.
In less than 2 hours' time, Korea will call an official end to the outbreak of Middle East respiratory syndrome following guidelines set by the World Health Organization. An official end to the latest MERS outbreak, but that doesn't rule out the possibility of another MERS outbreak. Kim Ji-yeon reports.
When the clock strikes midnight on December 24th, Korea will declare a formal end to the outbreak of Middle East respiratory syndrome, 7 months after the country's first case was confirmed. The Ministry of Health and Welfare said the decision follows guidelines set by the World Health Organization. The international body suggests an end of transmission can be declared 28 days after the last patient either fully recovers or dies. 28 days is double the maximum incubation period for MERS. The country's last MERS patient, a man who had been suffering from cancer, died from MERS-related complications on November 25th. The ministry says it will continue to be on alert since new cases are still being reported in Middle Eastern countries. It also says it'll improve its readiness to deal with such outbreaks in the future. Earlier this month, authorities lowered the country's alert from yellow to blue, which is the country's lowest alert level. First confirmed on May 20th in Korea, the respiratory disease claimed 38 lives and infected nearly 190 people. During the outbreak, thousands of people were quarantined at home or in medical facilities to prevent secondary and tertiary infections. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
When you have that nice and cool bottle of beer after a long day's work or after a party with heavy drinkers in the crowd, what do you do with the dozens of empty glass bottles? It's a whole lot of work in and of itself just taking them out to the garbage chute. Consider this. You bring your empty bottles to redemption machines at local grocery stores and you make a little bit of money, a small refund per bottle. Now, not only have you benefited financially, you also have a reason to feel good knowing that you've taken it upon yourself to initiate an environmentally friendly action. Cash for bottles or bring your bottles back, if you will. Our news feature tonight with Lee Ji-won.
These are so-called reverse vending machines installed in major supermarkets by the government as a means to have more empty bottles returned. Moreover, the government's policy on bottle deposit refund also encourages the general public to return empty bottles. Currently, the deposit for a soju bottle is 40 Korean won, or 3 cents in US dollars, and 4 cents for a beer bottle. But the returning rate has been low as most people consider the deposit fees to be not worth the trouble. The amount of bottle deposit refunds that consumers overlook sums up to about 50 million US dollars every year. In order to facilitate the exchange of empty bottles for their respective deposit fees, the Ministry of Environment set up these machines. This machine allows people to easily return bottles and get their refunds.
When a bottle of beer, soju, or any other beverage that has a deposit fee included in its price is put into the machine measures the weight and size of the bottle and issues a receipt. This receipt can then be exchanged for money.
Let's hear from a shopper about her opinion on this machine.
I used to just throw away the bottles because it was not worth the trouble to get a few cents refund. But now I think these machines will make it easier.
Although the machines are yet to be widely accessible, consumers are supposedly still able to get their bottle deposits back from a nearby mom-and-pop shop or grocery store as well. We went to see how it is. Since one soju bottle has a deposit refund fee of 3 cents, 5 bottles should give me 15 cents.
혹시 이거 빈 소주병 받으세요?
20원이요.
20원이요?
네.
소주병에 제가 40원이라고 쓰여 있는 것 같았는데.
네. 우리 보관하고 뭐 하다 보면 들락날락하면 깨지고 이래서 저희는 그렇게 받아요.
얼마?
20원, 2원, 100원이요.
Many business owners refuse to buy the empty bottles or pay the full amount of deposits, saying that it costs them money to store the bottles. However, they are actually paid an extra fee for storing them, and such reasons have hindered most people from returning their empty bottles. There are also environmental and economic reasons to increase the return rate of empty bottles. For every 1% increase in reusing bottles, about 11,000 tons of CO2 emissions can be prevented, as well as about $5.8 million being saved.
It costs about 15 cents to make one new bottle, but it only costs 6 cents to sterilize and clean one bottle in order to be reused, and a bottle can be reused up to 6 times.
So to encourage the return of more bottles, the Ministry of Environment proposed to increase the deposit refund fees for soju bottles from 3 cents to 8 cents, and for beer bottles from 4 cents to 11 cents. But companies in the alcoholic drinks industry, as well as the current administration's Regulatory Reform Committee, are against such measures.
If the bottle deposits increase by 5 cents and 7 cents, restaurants and retailers will start selling alcoholic beverages with an increase of about 80 cents, and this, in the end, is only worse for consumers.
The second session of the committee over a possible increase on deposit fees will take place on Thursday.
The committee is doubtful whether increasing bottle deposit fees will have consumers walk all the way to stores to return empty bottles. We asked the Ministry of Environment to propose other ways to alleviate this situation.
Government efforts to encourage a faster and more efficient return rate of empty bottles are bound to be successful only if consumers show interest in doing so. 이지원, Arirang News.
Rescue workers have pulled a survivor from the rubbles of the devastating landslide in Shenzhen, China. The young man had been trapped under massive amounts of mud and other debris for nearly 3 days. Bruce Harrison is live in the studio with me. Bruce, how did this man survive nearly 3 days under the rubbles, and what condition was he when he was found?
Hello, Kanang. Rescuers found 19-year-old Tian Ziming early this morning and were able to pull him out from the rubble a few hours later. He'd been trapped in a factory under part of the roof and spared the crushing weight of much of the landslide that is likely to have buried other people. He's been in surgery and is expected to survive, but his right foot was seriously injured, and doctors said they're going to try their best to save that foot.
Now, Bruce, he's the lucky one, but we have nearly or over 70 people who are still unaccounted for. What about the fate of those people?
Yeah, around 70 people are still missing. Rescue workers are trying frantically to find those people. Actually, Tian told crew there was another survivor near him in the factory, though there hasn't been any reports yet that the person he referred to has been found, and at least 2 bodies had been discovered as of Wednesday morning. The man leading the search spoke to reporters after Tian was pulled from the building, showing just how hard they're working to find other people still alive.
Our resources command continued in the day and night rescue according to the grid style and accurate rescuing arrangement in the Shenzhen landslide accident.
Dozens of excavators are digging through the massive area in hopes of finding other survivors. Despair surrounds those who escaped the landslide, as many now have no jobs. The deluge of mud and construction waste from an overflowing dump covered 33 buildings. Iraqi forces say they're making great progress on taking back the city of Ramadi from Islamic State. Government troops are chipping away at ISIS-held territory in Iraq after recapturing Tikrit in March. A military spokesperson said troops stormed the center of Ramadi to challenge an estimated 250 to 300 Islamic State militants entrenched there. They've been fighting to recapture the city since November, following months of efforts to cut off supplies there. The military is optimistic they'll regain control within days.
Victory is coming, God willing, by the efforts of brave men. Long live Iraq and its people, and paradise for the martyrs.
Regaining control of Ramadi would be a major victory for the Iraqi government, but its work would be far from over. Islamic State still controls Mosul, Iraq's second largest city, and Fallujah, which lies between Ramadi and Baghdad.
Well, on a very different note, Google is said to be in talks with Ford Motors to get its self-driving cars on the road by year 2020. Now, what is the deal all about?
Well, we don't know much about the deal yet. We're speculating. There's speculation that Ford is the company that Google is targeting to produce those cars. Now, Google began talks earlier this year with most of the world's top automakers to speed up efforts to introduce the cars in just 4 years. In June, Google began testing tiny bubble-shaped self-driving prototypes on public roads. If they reach a deal, it's expected to be announced at the annual International Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas next month.
Well, Bruce, year 2020, that is a very ambitious goal. It's now 4 years away only, and in 4 years, we'll see self-driving cars on the road. I can't imagine that, but I guess it makes perfect sense that Google and Ford will pair up, if anything, because, you know, Google has its very advanced autonomous software, and that with Ford cars, I guess that makes perfect sense.
Ford, has a long history of making cars, and Google is going to use its existing GPS technology to help produce these cars. And the interesting thing is that with just the push of a button, you should be able to drive hands-free to wherever you want if these things get in the market by 2020.
Right. I mean, there are safety issues, and there will be tedious regulations that they'll have to pass, but hopefully we will see them so that I can enjoy my ride without having to drive.
Sure. Drink your coffee. No worries.
All right. Well, thank you so much for that, Bruce.
My pleasure.
See you tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Well, can you believe it? Christmas is 2 days away, and I remember Cheonan telling us that it's not going to be a white Christmas, but instead we'll have a rare phenomenon known as lucky moon on Christmas Day. Well, what is a lucky moon? And for more details, let's go over to our weather center. Cheonan, what is this lucky moon all about?
Well, a lucky moon is a full moon that falls on Christmas Day, and we'll be witnessing this event for the first time since 1977. And with bright skies in the forecast, this year's lucky moon will be visible from pretty much everywhere. Now, the moon will rise at 5:27 p.m. on Friday here in Seoul and will be the brightest at 8:11 p.m. Now, remember, if you missed this year's lucky moon, you'll have to wait 19 years to see the next one. It was a dusty day in most parts of the country, and things will get dustier tomorrow with many regions being engulfed in high levels of toxic dust. So if you plan to be outdoors for a prolonged hours, take the proper precautions, and for those with the respiratory problems, don't forget to have your mask with you tomorrow. And as for temperatures, it was pretty mild as if we were in the late autumn. Seoul reached over 10 degrees Celsius this afternoon, and tomorrow should be a bit cooler, but the readings will still above this seasonal average under partly sunny skies. On that note, let's move on to tomorrow's temperatures. Checking on the lows first. Here in the capital, we'll kick off at 0. Daegu will start out the day at 3, 8 for Busan and Jeju. And afternoon highs will be still relatively mild, with high peaking to 6 here in Seoul, 8 for Daejeon, 9 in Daegu. Busan and Jeju will see a high of 14 and 11 tomorrow afternoon. And for the Christmas holiday, we're going to have a freezing temperatures, and this cold snap will hit its peak on Sunday with a low plunging to -6 here in Seoul. Well, that's Korea for you, and here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
Well, Christmas is in the air. Make sure you come up with a couple of wishes for the lucky moon on Christmas Day. That is our broadcast on this Wednesday night. I'm Moon Gan-young. Thank you everyone for watching, and we hope to see you right back here same time tomorrow on NewsCenter.